It is me, Sierra Bazell, also known as Sierra the BB Doula. And today I have not one but two special guests with me today. This is my husband, Odell Bazell. He is with us today. And we have Mr. Brandon with us today. He is a therapist who has also dealt with male infertility, and he'll be sharing a little bit about his story and what he does. So say hi to the people.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Happy to be with you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. So now, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? And, how did all of this unfold?
So I'm Brandon, and of course, I'm a licensed mental health therapist. And my goal is to really help men, women, and couples deal with the emotional challenges of infertility. And the reason it came about is because I myself experienced infertility as was variable azoospermia. And that pain, that challenge was so heart-aching that it really caused conflict in my life and within my marriage. And I was looking for people to turn to, and there was no one to turn to, but in turn, I was losing myself. And that's when I decided to add this form of therapy, or add infertility therapy to my practice, which is where we stand now.
Wow. Okay, so you told us a little bit about your story and kind of what you dealt with. And, everybody knows kind of our story and how things went. But what was the real turning point for you?
The real turning point was coming home and just zoning out. I was zoning out to the TV. I didn't want to hear from the wife. And I realized that I didn't want to do anything anymore. Like, I didn't want to go to church anymore. I didn't want to be married anymore. I didn't want to go to work anymore. I was just really losing myself and my self-esteem. And I kept thinking I was less than a man. And it was hurtful, and there was no one to turn to. And you turn to people and they say, it'll be okay. And I'm like, I'm struggling. It's okay. And yet they still go with that feeling of, look at the good parts of, you can sleep in, you ain't got to worry about the stress of children. I'm like, I wanted kids. I wanted children my whole life. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I were in our bedroom, and I was sitting on the floor. I'm always sitting on the floor for some reason. And I think we're going back and forth. And I said, you know what? I'll grant you a divorce. You don't have to go through this. This is my battle. Mm. And that was a turning point, because at that time is when she really embraced me and said, we'll stick through this together. We're married. And I didn't marry you for your fertility. I married you because of the man you are. And I was like, and that's when I said, this is breaking me. I need to find a therapist. I need to talk to somebody. There has to be an outlet. The problem was, when I went, there were no therapists, no male therapists. Mm-hmm. And not only are there no male therapists, there are very few infertility therapists. So that's when I decided to really turn things around and gain control of this, because it was wrecking my life and ruining it. And it was 8 months strong at this time, where it was just taking its toll on my own soul.
Mm. Yeah, and if I could jump in, Brandon, I think a couple of things to point out, especially for those watching, or if you're listening to this as a recording. Brandon's Black. He's a Black male. And as a Black male, and Sierra and I going through our own fertility challenges as a couple, Like, Black folks don't talk about this stuff. Especially
not at all.
Especially dudes. Like, especially dudes. There is no way on earth that I'm going to go to another dude and express something like that. So what I want you to kind of convey to those listening, if let's say that they're struggling, or it's a challenge that they're going through, what's that first step to break through that kind of male machoism type thing to accept help?
Lose your ego. And it's all in our ego, and the pride that comes with being a man. And I don't know when fertility became wrapped up into our ego, but I know sexual prowess is wrapped up into the ego, especially the ego of Black men, because that's what we're taught as soon as we hit puberty. It's almost this thing of, oh, you need to get a girlfriend and you need to do this, and it's all about that machismo. So lose your ego first, because it's the painful journey to battle alone. And once you lose your ego, have the courage to reach out to someone. That will be the first step. Just have to lose your ego so your pride doesn't stand in your way, and then have the courage to reach out to someone and talk about it. But since we don't talk about it, like you just said, Odell, that person may not understand. So also know that may come as a challenge as well.
That's huge. And I want to ask you something else, because how long were you and your wife married before you all started to want to grow your family?
2 years. 2 years, we felt we were in a good enough spot within our marriage to start a family. And the journey went on for 6. Mm-hmm. So we adopted our son in 2017 and we stopped protecting ourselves in 2012, late 2012. So at that time, we're like, if it happens, it'll happen. And then it just wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And when will it happen? And she jumped on board early, actually. She went and got tested in 2013. And I was the late one. I was like, my family is highly fertile. And as we were talking, it was like 3 pregnancies at the same time on my side of the family. So I'm like, we're good. I'm good. Mm. And so she went and got tested, and she came back okay, and I refused at the same time, and she was like, doctor said I'm good. I can go get tested again. And she did eventually, and results came back, she's good again. And I'm like, okay. After a few more months, I was like, okay, I'll go get tested. And that's when I seen my primary care doctor, and he was just like, let me refer you to a urologist, because I know nothing about this. That urologist did 2 sperm samples and an ultrasound. And he was like, I don't have any results for you. Here's another doctor. He's the best in the state. And so I went to that doctor, and again went through an ultrasound and 2 more sperm samples, and he said it's coming back inconclusive. And that's when I'm like, oh, I am the problem. Mm-hmm. So I had to apologize to my wife for, first of all, stepping into the battle so late. And then really go through that journey.
Wow. Wow. I'm sure that must have been very difficult, especially for you as a man, to go through all of that. We usually see women talking about their journeys and how much it crushed them and kind of challenged their worth as a woman. But I can't imagine what that was like from your perspective. Like you said, you see all these people in your family and you think, oh, it can't be me. They're, really fertile. So I know that must have been difficult. But let's talk about adoption a little bit. So what made you guys decide to go that route?
We had tried IUI 5 times. Each one failed. And that was its own emotional roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, we want a child. How do we get the child? And IVF, the cost of that is just out the question. So we started looking into other ways, and we looked at foster and adoption. And like, you know what? I can really go this route. And because we both have family who have been adopted, it wasn't strange to us to adopt. And after finding the right agency, it felt really comfortable and really normal to adopt. And that's when we decided that we'll go through it. Because even that took about 1.5 years to finally find the right agency that made us feel comfortable about adopting. Mm-hmm. It took a lot of research on that end.
Wow. And what was that process like for you all? Because I think we did a video about kind of how our process went, and we went foster care as well as, the route that we took. But what was that like for you, having gone through all of, the issues with IUI and all of that, and now to be starting another journey? Because I really want people to understand, they kind of see adoption as the fix to infertility. And I want them to know that it's not like that. So do you mind sharing a little bit about what that was like for you guys?
I do not. IUI was hard. Every time the pregnancy test came up empty, you cried. And I'm not a crier, but the infertility journey took me through an emotional roller coaster. And we just sat there most nights and cried and held each other together and really tried to figure that out of how to proceed. The adoption part of it, I don't want to brag. But it wasn't extremely difficult for us. The most difficult part was us being our own roadblock with the financial part and turning in paperwork and the willingness to do paperwork because of the home study and being judged on your parenting skills. And like, I'm a good person. I went through all this. I had this degree, blah, blah, blah. The same egotistical things you go through when it comes to being a successful person. And so we were kind of our own roadblocks in that case and slowed down the process. Mm-hmm. But we're fortunate enough, once we got everything complete, we were chosen right away. So we didn't even spend a lot of time in the adoption pool, mm-hmm. Whereas I worked with people and I've met people who are still waiting for their child. So I pray they get it soon or get their child soon. But we were very fortunate in adoption because of our agency. Mm-hmm. They were really on top of it. Like, you need this done, we need this done. Fill out this paperwork. Don't worry about this. We got this part. They made the process really simple. Whereas other agencies made it more complex. So I'm really glad we chose the agency we chose.
Wow, that's really good that you talked about the agency because, like you said, you can choose the wrong agency and end up waiting forever or having to switch agencies because things are taking so long. And we see that a lot. And as a therapist, what would you say to a person who is dealing with wanting to look at adoption after dealing with infertility?
As a therapist, I really just go through the emotional journey that they're on because adoption isn't necessarily the fix. And just as if you try IVF, IUI, embryo transfer, or any of the birthing methods, adoption itself comes with its own challenges, where you have age working against you, you have race working against you, religion, just your way of thought. So there's so many other factors that come into place with adoption, and preparing them for those rejections as well. Because we all want the acceptance, but are we ready for the rejections that happen when it comes to adoption? What if this birth mother doesn't choose you? Or what if you don't choose that birth mother because she has too many requests, and the adoption is open and you wanted to close adoption, which rarely happens anymore. And going through the emotions that comes with that. And is there a birth father? Because we can't forget about the father. And what does he want? Are there any grandparents involved that want to be in? So I really just take people through that journey. And we kind of go into all the negatives, because I don't want adoption to be the cure to infertility, so to say. And because infertility, while having a child may fix that need, there's a recidivism to infertility. And the second child, how will you feel? Will you want to try IUI, IVF, or embryo transfer again? Or do you stick to adoption because that's how you got your first child? So it repeats itself. The feeling never goes away.
Right. I'm glad that you said that. Because a lot of people think that just because you have a baby, so let's say you go through infertility, you end up doing IUI or in vitro or adopting, and then, you're back at square one. Do we have another baby? Do we not have a baby? And you're still having to deal with it, because just because you had a baby or you adopted a child is not going to go away.
No, far from it. And I think the people who need to understand that the most are your family members. Even to this day, my own mother still asks me, when are you going to try for number 2? And my answer is like, number 2 will get here, but number 1 was hard enough. Can we enjoy that moment? And it's still a certain reminder that you just can't naturally go have number 2. And how are you going to have number 2 if it still becomes the biggest question.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, and I think back to the Black male perspective, because I guess that's why I'm here, right? to give that side of it. As a therapist, just therapy in general in the Black community, like it seems we just got hip on it, right? Like it's like accepting that it's okay to get therapy and all of that. Have you found that it's harder to get Black men to open up about it, or do you find like once you kind of like let them know your perspective or your view, that they're more open to it? What's been your experience with that?
You know what? I've had a burst in Black clients lately. And the men who come are ready. So they already understand they have a problem or have a concern, and they just don't know what that concern is, or how to handle that concern or that trauma. But they come ready to open up. And don't get me wrong, there's still some that come guarded, but at some level, they're still ready to open up, and they're still ready to be a part of the session versus me having to ask questions. Because I'm not a question and answer therapist. I prefer we just have a natural conversation and let it flow, and I can pick and choose what I need to follow up on, and based on what you say. Other than that, if it's question and answer, it's an interview, and who wants to get interviewed every week? That's horrible.
Besides her. We're not about that stuff.
No.
But no, they come with a certain amount of openness. And I think if we can erase the stigma around therapy and take away the worry of having a diagnosis, then more men will come and be ready to be open. But it's just getting that diagnosis and feeling like, oh, the world's going to think I'm quote unquote crazy, or I have a problem, or now I have a disability, so to say. When in a sense you have something that has traumatized you and you need to heal from it. Other than that, we're just going to keep hurting each other. And that's the whole basis of therapy, is to really end the hurt, because it will get transferred somehow, some way.
And you talk about ending the hurt with the marital component to it. Your wife, you talked about how she was just phenomenal and saying, hey, we're going to stick through this with you. For those watching, for those listening, and maybe their spouse, I'm not going to say isn't as supportive, but they're not as informed. What are some ways that, if you're a woman, and you have a husband, or if you're a husband with a husband or whatever, like how can you help that person, or how can they help that person better heal? Besides coming to you, and we'll make sure you check out Brandon the therapist. He's available. Still booking, virtual, available.
I am available. When it comes to couples, I really try to get couples on one accord, because that pain is real. They have hurt each other. Somebody has said something. There was a low blow in there, I promise you. And they need to heal from the pain they have caused each other, plus what they're going through. So the first thing is to listen to each other. And I tell couples, regardless of who has been diagnosed, there's no such thing as it's that partner's problem. Once you're diagnosed with infertility, it's a couple's concern. And it's a couple's problem. So who's infertile? We both are, because neither one are getting the results that you want. So listen to each other. For men who aren't the issue or don't have the diagnosis, express your feelings, because men will try to support their partner and not pay attention to their own feelings. But the fact is, they do have feelings around infertility just as much as their wife or husband may have feelings around infertility. So they have to really express themselves as well. That's my only exception to the rule. And that's because men just don't put the focus on themselves and ignore their own problems. But other than that, really listen to each other, number one. Discuss how you're feeling, number two. And be honest, be vulnerable. This is time to kick ego and pride out the door, because you don't have anything else to lean on but each other. And if you lose your marriage, what else do you have? And since there's already a 30% increase when it comes to divorce from infertility, the odds are stacked against you. And then be honest in the family planning process. Do you want to go through IVF? Do you really want to drain your 401k to have this child? And how many times are you willing to go through this? And are you okay with this method of having a child? Like, are you okay with adoption, or is adoption last resort? Are you okay with IUI? Are you okay with IVF? Are you okay with donor sperm? And what are your thoughts around that? So really start to talk to each other and get on one accord. It's the very first step and very first very first step. I'm tripping over words.
No, good stuff. Don't share too much because we still want them to pay you. Make sure you check out Brandon the therapist.
Right.
He provides very valuable information, but it's not free.
No.
But one more thing I'll say before I throw it back to Sierra. You really gave the audience, like in that little nugget that you just gave, like it's not, oh, it's his problem or it's her problem. It's our problem. Like it's not like it. And I remember saying that to somebody at some point in time in the past. That I had said that you just made me look smart. But I think one more thing, like I said before, I pass it back to Sierra, is that for people looking to get that started and the actual healing, if you have a scar, if you have a trigger, if you have something that happens, I want you to kind of just, if somebody experiences that, they're like, all right, Brandon, yeah, we good, we on one accord, we good, we traveling, we having fun, but then they see, you know, somebody that they went to church with or that they went to high school with that they know is ratchet, having like their 8th baby. Like what that like that trigger, like help us deal with that. Because you know what I'm talking
about. There's a good book out, and it's called "It's My Life, Not Theirs." And you can't judge anyone as much as you want to. You can't judge anybody by the choices they make. Mm-hmm. It's hard, but you really can't judge them by the hand they were dealt. Because whereas they have 8 kids, what else are they suffering with? And are you suffering with that same issue? So while you're having trouble having 1 kid, you might be a lot better off in other areas than they are. But don't compare at all. Try to avoid comparisons. You'll drive yourself crazy.
Yes. What kind of issues do you help people with? So we know that you're a therapist, that you deal with infertility, but what kind of issues can someone come to you with?
My specialties are anxiety, depression, grief and loss, infertility, and relationship counseling.
Awesome. That's awesome. So if y'all are looking for a therapist, please check him out. Now, how can they find you if they're trying to find a therapist, and are you available virtually?
I am available virtually.
He is available virtually. Check him out on Instagram. Check him out online.
So you can visit me on IG. My website is infertilityisn'tinferior.com. Find me on IG, Brandon.therapist. The actual full story of my infertility journey is on YouTube at Brandon.therapist. And also, I have a One Accord webinar, Getting on One Accord with Your Partner webinar, coming out November 5th. So stay tuned for that. You can sign up for my monthly newsletter. That's on infertilityisn'tinferior.com, or the link is in my Instagram bio. And those are all the ways I can be found as of right now.
Awesome. So if y'all are looking for a therapist, he's out there. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and giving us these wonderful nuggets. Raviz said you gave us a lot of good points. So thank you so much. We appreciate you.
No problem.
Yes, appreciate you. Thanks so much for being vulnerable and sharing. I think just one more thing I want to do, and this is probably a little selfish, but sometimes us being selfish can help other people. If somebody was, let's say, Brandon, hey, I want to sign up on, what would the process look like? Like, where are you located?
I'm in Minneapolis right now.
You're in Minneapolis. The Bazelles, we're in North Carolina. So let's say somebody in North Carolina
weather.
or or Texas is like, yo, I wanna look into that. I wanna get them to be my therapist. How do we do that? Like, take us through those steps, so make it easier for people.
The process is simple. Because I'm cash based, there's no insurance. I operate as an infertility coach, which gives me the power to work worldwide. So regardless of where you are, so if there's internet connection or telephone still works, we can meet. And the process is really simple. It's just a simple contract saying I'll keep your confidentiality. I won't abuse you. Same rules of my licensure, which is social work. So the NASW guidelines, I follow them strictly. Just by coaching, regardless of where you are, we can meet. We just got to make sure the time zone matches up.
Easy money. There you have it. Brandon, appreciate you. Everybody, thanks. This is your show. My bad.
Yes.
My bad.
Never my show, y'all. So used to doing this. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing and just giving voice to male infertility from your perspective. So we want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.